Welcome to the Onion Buns. So Canada's entering an election. Not officially yet, but it's pretty clear with all the nasty liberal attack ads going on out there right now. So what I want to do today is I'm going to cover a fantastic video by WyattClaypool. I'll put his information into the description of the video. So if you enjoy this video and you like what he has to say, by all means go visit his site, leave a like, leave a subscribe there. And last bit of stuff for me is I just started this channel, so I'm trying to bring it up to speed. So if anyone watching this could please leave a like and a subscribe. I'm trying to get to 4,000 subscribers, and yeah, if you enjoy the video, by all means share it to people you think will like it. This is how you grow a channel, and I'm in the very early infant stages of that. So anyway, Wyatt does a fantastic job of going over polling numbers, and I could look up all these numbers and make a video and everything, but you know, he's already done it. So why don't we do a react video on what he's showing? And hopefully everyone can find it interesting. I know I did. So sit back, grab a beer or a pop and some popcorn, and let's see what we have to show. Thanks. All right, so here we go. We have Polling Canada, federal polling from Pollara. And here's Wyatt telling you about it.
A 10-point lead for the Conservative Party of Canada. 42% for Pure Poilievre's Conservatives to 32% for the Liberals. That is a generic Liberal Party, but again, most people who are politically in tune and are taking polls realize it's pretty much going to be Mark Carney, and there's a sliver of a chance that Chrystia Freeland may be leading the Liberals. This Pollara poll is in fact probably still over-polling how well the Liberals are going to do in the next election. I do not think the Liberals are currently a 32% party nationally, and I don't think as badly run as the NDP is under Jagmeet Singh. He is an abysmal politician, terrible. They're still not, in my mind, an 11% party. I think we're going to see the NDP land somewhere around 13 to 15 points.
This is a good point. I'm, as I've said before, I'm not a socialist. I'll never be a socialist, so I really wouldn't bat an eye if the NDP stopped existing tomorrow. But the NDP has its core, and its core has them around 15-16%. If you don't poll that core, you're going to get lower numbers for the NDP, and you're going to get higher numbers for the Liberals. So what he's saying makes a lot of sense, is that there's some funny business going on with the polls. And even the ones with the Conservatives in the lead, there's still some funny business going on. As I said in a different poll, you have 4 pollsters that are paid by the Liberals. Those 4 pollsters are the only pollsters that have the Liberals neck and neck with the Conservatives, or even beating the Conservatives. Every other pollster has, like this poll with the Conservatives, with a 10, it's between a 10 and 15 point lead. But that still doesn't tell us how they came to these numbers. I remember a number of years ago when I was living in Ontario, it was during the disastrous reign of Premier Kathleen Wynne and Dalton McGuinty. Somebody, I think it was one of my friends as a goof, but they signed me up as an NDP. And I didn't know about this. You know, and it doesn't cost anything, so they just went to the website and signed me up. So I was getting all this NDP crap sent to me. And I got Main Street, I think it was, contacted me. And they said, oh, we want to do a poll about Kathleen Wynne. I'm like, okay, great. And they're like, so would you say the job Kathleen Wynne is doing was excellent, very good, or above average? I would say none of those. I think she's a horrible premier. Well, no, that's not an option. Well, I'm not going to give you the answer you want just because you're only giving me these positive results. I think she's a terrible premier, and I think she's doing an absolutely terrible job. Okay, we'll mark you down as undecided. No, I'm not undecided. I just told you I think she's doing a terrible job. So the pollster went through about 5 or 6 different questions, and every one of them was leading like this. And every time I said, no, those are not what I think. And at the end of the 5 or 6 questions, the pollster goes, who did you vote for in the last provincial election? And because Kathleen Wynne is Justin Trudeau, like they're 2 peas in a pod, I said I voted for the Conservatives. And the pollster goes, oh, you're not the type we want to talk to, and hung up on me. 2 days later, the Toronto Red Star on their headline, new poll shows overwhelming support for Kathleen Wynne and the Liberal Party of Ontario. Well, in the next election, Kathleen Wynne and her Liberal Party of Ontario lost official party status. That's how overwhelming the support was, even in Ontario and Toronto for her. But that pollster, they weighed every question to make sure that if you were going to answer, you had to answer in support of her. There was absolutely no way to answer not in support. That's what's happening with these national polls for the Liberals right now. You got the 4 pollsters who are literally paid to find positive results for the Liberals. And then you got the rest who, they've got the 10 to 15 point lead for the Conservatives, but even they're like, well, we really don't want to piss off the Liberals just in case they somehow manage to win. Their history is showing, just ask Sun News Media as a TV station, if you don't toe the Liberal line, there will be repercussions. In many ways, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals are the same type A personality that Donald Trump and the Republicans are in the States. If you don't agree with them, they will punish you. So anyway, here we go. Back to the poll.
Everyone is currently just very down on the NDP because the Liberals are the cool, shiny new toy on the left again. Once Mark Carney is the leader and really gets the shine ripped off him, you're going to see some progressives migrate back over to the NDP and park their vote with Jagmeet Singh once again. But let's move on to the next poll. That Pollara poll, again, a 10-point spread for the Conservatives. That's very good considering Pollara before was showing a very tight race within 1 or 2 points. Now we have Innovation. Now, Innovation's last poll did have the Conservatives leading by 9 points, and this current one is only showing them leading by 7. But again, I think this is a high watermark, and there's already a lot of other, evidence to prove that the Conservatives are both doing better and the Liberals are probably doing worse. The Bloc Québécois being only at 6% doesn't feel realistic to me. Yves-François Blanchet and the Bloc Québécois haven't really done anything to embarrass themselves or alienate any of their voters, and in fact, separatist sentiments are rising in Quebec, nowhere near where they were in the 90s, but even them just improving a little bit should at least maintain where the Bloc was in 2021, if not expand their support. I think we're going to see the Bloc Québécois at 7 to 9 points, not at 6. That would be them probably losing a dozen seats. I don't think that's currently in the card.
Okay, it's good. Another good point about the Bloc. The Liberals have Montreal. I don't know why, but they do. But outside of Montreal, Quebec is basically Bloc territory. The NDP might pick up a couple seats here and there, but for the most part, it's Bloc territory. So to try to, you don't see it on the federal polls, but I've seen a few provincial polls recently where the pollsters are trying to suggest the Liberals are neck and neck with the Bloc, and that's just not reality. The Bloc are going to win. They are going to sweep Quebec. So if you are trying to suggest they're neck and neck in Quebec, that just means you're over-polling Montreal. If you actually poll everywhere, you're going to see that the Bloc are considerably more powerful in Quebec than the Liberals are. And Carney, with his horrible French, he's got terrible French, is going to lose even more ground in Quebec because they put so much importance on their elected officials being able to speak Quebec French. Okay, and if you can't do that, you drop in the polls. So Carney made a fool of himself in the Liberal leadership French debate. He actually came out and said he was in favor of Hamas because he didn't understand the language. So Wyatt makes a great point that 6% is very low. Probably looking at a 3% jump in the bloc. You drop the Liberals by 3%. Well, now they're at 28. The NDP are at 16. That's probably about where they're going to finish. So you're looking at 38 to 28 separation. 10 point, as most pollsters not paid by the Liberals are coming up with, it's a 10 to 15 point lead for the Conservatives. And the other point that Wyatt keeps making is the shine is coming off of Carney. I firmly believe that once he calls an election, he's going to have to do a debate. And I think Poilievre and the Quebec guy are absolutely going to destroy him in those debates because, well, Carney can't speak French, so the Poilievre and the Quebec guy can speak French, so that's just going to be ugly. And in the English debate, as we've seen, Carney can't help himself. He is a pathological liar. But in the Liberal leadership, they're not going to call him on that. It's a giant hug fest. But once you get the Conservatives and the Bloc and the NDP and even the PPC in there, they're gonna call him on every lie, and he's gonna look like a fool.
And I also don't think the CPC would ever be at 38%. I think it has become a solidly 41% and above party right now, but still, compared to what we had been seeing for the last 3 weeks from most pollsters, and this is still what I consider a high watermark for the Liberals in innovation research, this is a big improvement. But now, let us get to the real big news, and that is Leger, who, mind you, had the Liberals and Conservatives within 3 points. The Conservatives only...
Leger is one of the Liberal pollsters that's paid by the Liberal Party.
Leading by 3 points in their last poll about a week ago, and now they have the Conservatives leading by 13 points, 43 to 30, and the NDP at 13 and the Bloc at 6. Reminder, I think the Bloc's probably going to be more like 7, 8, or even 9, and that's really going to eat mostly into the Liberals polling in Quebec because the Conservatives don't really have anything you can take from them in the Quebec. There's a couple seats the Conservatives can win, but for the most part, where the Conservatives currently have seats, they're very Anglo-conservative friendly, very capitalist areas, where all the areas that the Bloc have, either it's a rural riding that the Bloc's never going to lose, or it's Montreal and Quebec City, where the Bloc Québécois has the ability to start eating into the Liberals' sort of red island of Montreal. The Liberals may be technically popular in Quebec, but really are they? They are popular in, somewhere like Gatineau. They're popular in Montreal. They're popular in Quebec City. Even Quebec City's on a little bit of a knife's edge. And so with the polls moving a little bit away from them, or even if the Liberals gained a lot in the polls, they're really just holding onto Montreal harder than they usually would have. But if they slip and the Bloc Québécois starts getting 8 or 9% nationally, which would translate into high 30s, that's when they start eating around the suburban Montreal areas, and the Liberals start losing seats in an area that they cannot afford to lose seats. That is the problem. And I want to get into the specific data behind this poll, 43 for the Conservatives.
The other thing I want to point about Leger, when you're dealing with any of the 4 pollsters, Leger, Nanos, Ipsos, and I'm forgetting the other one, but when you're dealing with the 4 pollsters that are paid by the Liberals, even when you got a lead, like a 13-point lead here, it's always been a safe assumption, and I've been saying this for 2 decades, and I've been proven right for 2 decades, that typically on these 4 pollsters, you can drop the Liberal Party by 5 points and give the Conservatives another 5 points. Typically, now that doesn't always mean the Conservatives win, obviously, but there's always about a 5-point margin that's credited to the Liberals on these pollsters that just doesn't exist. It's intentional bias to prop up the Liberal Party. So even on this poll with a 13-point lead, I wouldn't be shy to say the real numbers are more like 48 for the Conservatives and 25 for the Liberals. Because history has shown us that with these 4 pollsters, they always weight it in favor of the Liberals. Even if the Liberals are losing, they weight it to make the Liberals look better. And if the Liberals are winning, they weight it to make the Liberals look way overpowered. So, again, like with the mainstream media, you have to understand the bias of the source you are looking at.
30 for the Liberals. As you can see, since the last poll, the Conservatives gained 5, the Liberals have lost 5, NDP have lost 1, the Bloc have lost 1, and then the Green Party and the PPC are staying where they're at. Here is where I'm basically talking about why it's impossible right now for the Liberals to win. Right now, Pierre Poilievre, and that's this top number here, and this bottom number is the Liberals. This is Atlantic Canada that we're looking at right now. In Atlantic Canada, the Conservatives are at 33 and the Liberals are at 37, with Justin Trudeau as the generic leader in this poll. We'll get to how Mark Carney polls as the leader a bit later and why I don't think that's going to hold up over time. But the Liberals are currently leading in Atlantic Canada by 4 points. And usually that would be cool. That would be pretty neat for the Liberals to be leading because they've gotten so used to trailing hard, even in Atlantic Canada. The problem is, let's go back to 2015. The Liberals did a clean sweep of Atlantic Canada, literally won every seat. Since then, the Conservatives have grabbed a seat here or there. I think the NDP might have gotten 1. The Greens in one of the elections got 1. Now it's back to being Liberal. For the most part, though, that's with the Liberals getting mid-40s to almost high 40s in their support. 37 to 33 is death. They cannot be in a knife fight with the Conservatives.
He's correct. But something to keep in mind, the 37 to 33, that's all within the margin of error of any poll. So you could literally flip those numbers and the poll numbers would still be in the margin of error.
Conservatives in somewhere like the Maritimes. They need to be far ahead in order to be winning. Now let's move over to Ontario. In Ontario, the Conservatives are at 44%. Liberals are at 33. This is the number where basically the Liberals lose every single swing riding. They lose every single swing riding, and all they start to hold on to is maybe they get to keep Kingston and the Islands, maybe they keep a London seat, maybe they keep a couple Mississaugas and a Brampton, but it's basically just downtown core Toronto that they're holding on to, and maybe even they lose some seats then with an 11.
So when I lived in Ontario for 20 years, it became very apparent to me that Ontario is split into 3 factions. You have Toronto and the GTA, which they mostly vote Liberal, but they're left-wing voters for the most part until you hit them in the pocketbook. That's when they turn on them. That's what happened to Kathleen Wynne. Outside of the GTA is, except for Ottawa, is basically all conservative, except for Thunder Bay area, which for some godforsaken reason is NDP, and that one's never made sense to me, but whatever. So you have that's how it's split. Right now, Toronto is starting to look at the Conservatives, or the GTA maybe not the core of Toronto, because they're the most alt-left lunatics that you will meet in your lifetime. For the most part, that's a generalized term. I know some great people in Toronto, but the majority of the voters, I think, for fuck's sake, they elected Olivia Chow. Come on, that says it all. But anyway, the GTA is starting to turn because the Liberal Carney Trudeau policies are now starting to affect them in their pocketbooks. life is getting too expensive. Inflation is at an all-time high. Our dollar is almost at record lows. They're upping the carbon tax again in April. They would be smart to cancel that one, but it's the Liberals we're dealing with, so who knows. This is what happened to Kathleen Wynne. She was so freaking arrogant that when she ran for the provincial premiership, she didn't even leave the GTA. She didn't go outside of the GTA to campaign. She only campaigned in Toronto and the GTA because that's all she needed to get a majority government in Ontario. Everybody outside of that voted Conservative or NDP, but she got her majority government and Ontario suffered. Once the policies started hitting the GTA and making their lives miserable, that's when they turned on her, and as history shown, the Ontario Liberal Party lost official party status, and that was like 8 years ago, and they're still trying to recover from that devastation. So, they just had an election, and the Liberal leader couldn't even win her seat. She lost her seat. So, now we're seeing this federally, where things are so costly in Canada and so expensive, and there's no real hope on the future with these Liberal policies, that you're starting to see the Conservatives be able to push into the GTA and maybe even the outskirts of Toronto. They're never going to touch the Toronto core. The Toronto core does not live in the real world. They are oblivious to the real world. But those surrounding areas around Toronto, the GTA, and even the outskirts of Toronto, you could see flip. And that is the core base of the Liberals. The Liberals get their votes. The Liberals do not represent Canada. The Liberals get their votes in Toronto, the GTA, Montreal, Ottawa, and Vancouver. And recent elections, they got them in Atlantic Canada, but that was mostly through fear and intimidation. Once that fear and intimidation wears off in Atlantic Canada, you will see them starting to vote for NDP and Conservatives and maybe even the PPC. Why, I don't know, but anyway, they might. But it was just through fear and intimidation for that area of the country. The core regions for the Liberals are Toronto, the GTA, Ottawa, Montreal, Vancouver. Do you see a pattern there? It's all metropolitan cities. The Liberals do not care, have never cared about rural Canada. That's why Trudeau hates Alberta so much. Alberta is mostly a rural, or the mindset anyway, is a rural mindset. And Trudeau absolutely does not understand or value the rural mindset. He is an elitist, and yeah. So anyway, here we go.
7-point spread, depending on the demographics. Especially Jewish-heavy neighborhoods are really not happy with the Liberals on just how tolerant they have been of terrorism and basically anti-Semitism in the streets. So
that's another good point, and something the mainstream media never talks about, is there is going to be, in this next election, there is going to be a huge backlash at the Liberals over their anti-Semitism. And even though it was a flub, and we all know it was a flub, and we make fun of it, but it was a flub. He didn't mean it. But Carney said in the French debate, we support Hamas. And, well, that was a flub because he can't speak French worth of crap. It's actually, the reason people can run with it is because so many policies and actions by the Liberal Party actually support that. Justin Trudeau gave Hamas $350 million. Okay, think about that. He gave a recognized terrorist outfit in Canada $350 million, which they took and they attacked Israel. So come this next election, Even though the mainstream media doesn't talk about it, and this is part of Toronto, this is part of traditional Liberal voters, there is going to be a huge backlash at the Liberal Party for their antics and policies supporting terrorism against the Jewish people.
Oh, yeah, that's shaky. I don't think Yara Sachs wins. 11-point spread, that's really bad. But let me now take you in the nightmare fuel numbers for the Liberals. Again, they've been trailing sometimes more than 13 points. We saw back like 4 months ago, they were trailing by 20 points, 23 points. The problem is that was usually the Conservatives just running the score up even harder than they usually do in Alberta and Saskatchewan, so sometimes that throws it off. But the 13-point spread here is in all of the worst places for the Liberals. Because remember, the swing provinces in this country are the Atlantic provinces, Ontario, and then you have BC. Look at BC. In BC, Conservatives are at 49%, Liberals at 32%, and the NDP are at 15%.
49%. To get a massive majority in a Canadian federal election, you need 40%. 40% is the high water mark to get a majority government. So that number is really telling.
Which should make you not wonder why Jagmeet Singh doesn't want an election. That guy's going to lose his seat in Burnaby, and I think there's a good chance he tries to swap into a different riding that he has a better chance in. His riding, in fact, got cut in half after the 2021 election, so he has to choose where he wants to run. Either, I believe, Burnaby North Seymour, or he has to run in Burnaby Centre. Burnaby Centre is the better chance, but it's still a 50-50 shot. And if they're polling at only 15% in BC, he's dead. There's just no, Jagmeet Singh is done. He's got to find a new riding or he's going to lose. But 32 for the Liberals, a 17% trail is insane. And here's the other number that's crazy. So BC, that would basically be the Liberals holding on to some downtown Vancouver ridings, maybe a Surrey riding or two, maybe a riding in Victoria. That's it. They're done. Their hubs of support are gone. That's the problem. A few of them are holding up. Montreal is holding up. Toronto's holding up. Some areas of the urban centers around Atlantic Canada will hold up. BC is a complete write-off at this point. For the Liberals, they can't win. Men, this is the real reason the Liberals are losing. Yes, women are tighter, and technically the Liberals could take a big lead with women at some point. But men are being won by the Conservatives 49%. Almost a majority, and I believe this is including undecided, so they probably are winning a majority. And only 30% is going towards the NDP. Sorry, the Liberals. There's only 8% going to the NDP, my goodness. 30% going to the Liberals. And I'm going to show you in a second. It doesn't get better with Mark Carney at all. 30% to 49% is the death of the Liberals. And especially, it's men under 45 who will not vote Liberal. There's no ad campaign. There's no, policy they could announce. There's nothing. There's no marketing scheme that they can use to win men back. Because men feel disrespected by the NDP and the Liberals. If you combine the Liberals and the NDP together with men, they are still trailing by 11 points. That's ridiculous. It's because, again, the Liberals have become a metropolitan, socially progressive, we'll create a giant social safety net under you to protect you because daddy government needs to be there for you. And that has very much turned off younger men who are working in the trades especially, who are part of private sector unions in construction and development and all that stuff and maintenance. Those guys will not vote for the Liberals. And even the innovation research polls have proven business liberals will not vote for the Liberals, especially business liberal men. Men who work in finance, who work in, are involved in tech startups and whatnot, many of them will not vote Liberal. They might be technically progressives. They may be culturally more liberal. They may like the social programs of Canada. But the economy sucks so bad they can't vote for you. That is where the Liberals are falling apart. They can win back women. They can kind of carve around the sides of some of these regions. But the problem is...
See, I don't know if they can win back women. Justin Trudeau, I said it in a different video, I'm going to repeat it here. He is the most sexist person I've ever met in my life pretending to be a feminist. Like he gropes a woman on the beach and then says, oh, well, she experienced it differently. He's faced with Jody Wilson-Raybould doesn't want to, she wants a legitimate investigation into SNL-Lavalin. He kicks her out of the party. Jane Philmont, she supports Jody. She's kicked out of the party. Ruby Dalla, she won't rubber stamp Mark Carney as the leader, so she's kicked out of the liberal leadership race. Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney by default, because he's been with Trudeau for 5 years behind the scenes, they are terrified of strong, powerful women. And I think women who are not brainwashed into the liberal ideology have started to recognize this. They'll come out and they'll tell you they care about women, but their actions don't justify the claim. They really don't. So I don't know if Wyatt's correct here that they can win back women. I think that number with women is going to continue to fall down. And he makes a point a little later on, but I'll just mention it now, is I've lost count the number of times I've heard a woman say, oh, but Justin's so cute. Now, I'm an ex-professional model, and I'm sorry, Justin doesn't, I don't understand that. I really don't. It's like, yeah, he wouldn't last 2 seconds in that industry. But okay, whatever. Different tastes, whatever. Carney, nobody's ever going to accuse Carney of being charismatic or cute to women. So he's not going to get that same coping mechanism that some, I guess, let's call them fence sitters, were giving to Justin. Like, that's going to be gone. So those votes are going to be gone too, because those votes were never about policy or finances or is Canada doing. It was strictly that they thought he was cute. So very shallow, but unfortunately some voters are exactly like that.
It's the suburban areas. It's suburban men who will not be showing up for the Liberals at all. The demographics, the thing is that Conservatives can win women. Conservatives can eat in to the amount of women that the Liberals are winning easier than the Liberals can eat into the men that the Conservatives are winning. That is the problem. The Liberals are behind, and they seek to lose more than the Liberals can. Sorry, the Conservatives have a less of a chance of losing their support than the Liberals do, and the Liberals are already trailing. Here is Mark Carney. When you poll Mark Carney, things barely get any better. So assuming he's the leader, the Liberals then go up to 33%.
That's interesting because remember, this poll right now is still in the giving Carney that, what we call now the Harris bump. It's like in the US election, when Harris replaced Biden, she got this big jump instantly. She didn't actually say anything or do anything to warrant the jump. It was just, she's not Biden, so she got this jump. Carney is getting the same thing, but as you can see by the numbers, it's only a little 3% bump. He's not getting a 10-point jump like Harris got over Biden. He's getting a little 3% bump, and when the shine wears off, that little 3% is going to fall. I wouldn't even be surprised if it falls down to 25%, maybe even 20%. Because Mark Carney, when you look at him and you listen to him speak, there's no charisma there. There's nothing to latch on to. He's a very dry, very, for lack of a better word, vanilla candidate. The Liberals probably would have been better with somebody like Ruby Dalla, because she, when you listen to her, I don't like her policies, but she's interesting. She's appealing. She's got, I guess in pro wrestling they call it the it factor. Mark Carney does not have the it factor. He's very dull.
The Bloc stays at 6, the Conservatives fall a couple points to 41, and the NDP fall another point to 12. I don't even think this is accurate. I think there are a lot of people who don't actually know much about Mark Carney. He is a sucking void that is the color beige. He is a boring, incompetent. He has no charisma. He is a gaffe machine. He is a braggart. And I think a lot of people are going to grow to hate him. But even in this poll, it shows that a lot of people are kind of figuring out there's not that much different with Mark Carney in charge. And so in previous polls, when you've said Mark Carney's the leader, the Liberals would jump up 8 to 12 points. It was crazy that if you said it was Mark Carney, then suddenly they're doing really well. And that didn't make sense because his name recognition isn't actually that high. I think it's because nobody knows who he is. When you say, what about Mark Carney's leader? A bunch of people say, I don't know who that is. I'm just going to assume it's someone competent. And then they are more willing to vote Liberal, especially those who maybe voted Liberal in 2021. If you say Mark Carney, I don't know who that is. I'm just going to assume it's 10 times better than Trudeau, so maybe I will vote Liberal. As Mark Carney's propensity to lie has been coming out as many times as his French is displayed to be terrible. That's why I cannot see the Bloc doing bad. Mark Carney's French is awful. And compared to other very fluent leaders, his French is kind of clunky, and a lot of people in French debates nationally are going to find it grating. But so moving on, though, what we have is that the Liberals, even with Mark Carney, are not doing any better where it matters. Atlantic Canada, they actually only do 1% better, and actually the Conservatives start crawling up on them. In Ontario, he does much better. Still trailing by 6 points. Yeah, it's fair enough. He's doing better. But in BC, he is still 17 points behind. It does not improve in BC. So really, by putting Mark Carney in, you are betting that somehow Quebecers are somehow going to start liking him. So all of a sudden, this one does show he gets a pop over Trudeau. But again, most people don't know his French sucks and that he's from Edmonton. Especially men. Look, with men, Liberals are doing 3% better. Conservatives are doing 3% worse, but that is still a 13% lead with men. And actually, with women, the Conservatives start doing better if Mark Carney is in. Because there's a lot of women who like Justin Trudeau, and that was part of Justin Trudeau's progressive orange liberal base. A lot of women liked how progressive Trudeau was, and as soon as you swap out Trudeau with someone less overtly progressive, even though Mark Carney is more of a radical on so many issues, a lot of women go away because they see this as like a betrayal. Certain very progressive women see this as a betrayal, and I think they actually might go NDP. Again, that hasn't shaken out yet because I think NDP support is so depressed because they just don't care about this election. We have seen polls where literally more than half of NDP supporters think Jagmeet Singh's a complete putz and they don't want to show up.
I think that's exactly it. Trudeau, the Liberals were losing at their lowest point because they had Trudeau as the leader. Like Canada, they'd had enough. They rejected Trudeau. That's why Carney's coming in, is because like there was polls there that had the Liberals losing official party status if Justin stayed on. So they've bounced back obviously from that with putting Carney in. But I think it's the same situation with Jagmeet. I don't think anyone in Canada has any respect for Jagmeet Singh after he refused to get rid of Trudeau because he wanted his pension. And he can soft shoe around it all he wants. That's all it was. He sold out Canada so he could get his pension. Because even back then, he was polling so low that he knew he wasn't getting reelected. Jagmeet Singh's political career is over. Wyatt suggests he moves to Burnaby, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think Jagmeet's polling in third place, a distant third place now, and I don't think it's going to matter. I think his political career in Canada is over. He will become some special interest activist, probably for Hamas, because that seems to be what he cares about the most anyway. And so I don't agree with Wyatt. I think Canada's just, they've had enough of people like Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau, and I think once they get to know Mark Carney, they'll say the same thing about them. Like my mother, you see a lot of Canadians right now, they suffer Trump derangement syndrome. My mother suffers Christina Freeland derangement system. The minute she hears Christina Freeland speak or somebody say that name, she absolutely loses it. She hates that woman with a passion. And I think a lot, and she's 87 years old, so, those are the people that are supposed to be more in line. And she only watches the mainstream news. So, like, I constantly have this argument with her where she's like, "Oh, I thought Mark Carney was really good." And I'm like, "No, Mom." But that's all she sees on CBC and CTV. That's all they tell her. You won't see the blemishes on those channels. They're paid not to show them. So, yeah, I think Canada is fed up with the alt left in general. I really do believe the Liberals' best scenario is they just tank this election because they're not going to win it. So tank this election, clean out their party, get rid of all of the alt-left globalists that have infected their party, get a new leader, not Mark Carney, not Christina Freeland, not any of those running, a brand new leader, and take the party back to the center-left. Canada is at its strongest when the Liberals are center-left and the Conservatives are center-right. And that's what needs to happen.
That will change as the election gets closer. A lot of people tend to just go back with their default party, and that's why I think it's pretty ridiculous to think the NDP is only going to clock in at 11%. They're going to do better than that. And I think Mark Carney ends up trying to upgrade the Liberals. Like, again, I'm a conservative. I want to see these guys lose. I'm just trying to analyze this from an objective perspective of really trying to dig into what motivates voters. This is what I was saying before they even got rid of Trudeau. I don't think you gain support by getting rid of Trudeau because you trade Trudeau's socially progressive voters who are really going to show up hard because they like how socially progressive Trudeau is. When you get rid of him and you swap in Mark Carney, yeah, you get some of the nervous middle-class voters who usually vote Liberal, maybe back willing to vote Liberal again because Mark Carney seems like a competent economic manager. He's not. He's been the economic advisor for 4 years. He sucked. But some of those people come back. But, I guess a good way of putting it, if you know who she is, the Dina Sharif, the crazy activist left Liberals, will stop showing up if Trudeau is no longer the prime ministerial candidate, which means this entire Liberal leadership race has been a practice in futility. The best it's done for the Liberals is maybe help them raise more money, but who cares? You're going to have to basically spend a bunch of money just to rebrand the party for Mark Carney. And again, you don't know if the guy's gaffes are going to catch up to him so badly that you'll wish you had Justin Trudeau, because you're going to lose anyways, at least lose with Justin.
I think Wyatt is grossly underestimating how much dislike there was for Justin Trudeau. I think the Liberals had to get rid of Trudeau. I was surprised he allowed it to happen. I really didn't think his ego would let him do it. But I think Wyatt is grossly underestimating how much Canada disliked Justin Trudeau at the end there. As I said, the polls right before he announced his retirement, which we're still waiting on, had the Liberals losing official party status. That's how low they were. They've bounced back with Carney. I don't think Carney's is good enough to get them a win, regardless what the paid pollsters try to claim. But he's bounced them back to where they're not going to lose official party status, at least, and that was the reality of Justin Trudeau. So I think Wyatt's grossly underestimating how much Canada hated Justin Trudeau and hates Justin Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau, and at least then he can't threaten to come back to take over your party again, because he can claim that, well, I never lost, so why not run me again in 8 years? Sounds a bit preposterous, but what else is Justin Trudeau going to do? He'll take one term off to go surfing or whatever, and then I think he actually might try and come back. And so with Carney, I think it's almost too obvious of a move. People don't like the economy. People lost confidence in government on healthcare and on crime. So let's have a button-down accountant be the leader of the party to bring people back. Because, he looks like a calculator, so maybe he knows how to do the public finances. He doesn't. He's terrible. And I think people are going to realize when all of his other semiconductor comments that, America actually relies on Canada for most of its semiconductors, and we import 0.8% of their semiconductors to them, a lot of that's going to start coming out. The fact that he has been a radical in policy. He backs central bank digital currency. He backs, carbon tax tariffs. He backs, He's backed UBI in the past. He was the guy who was the architect behind the GST HST freeze. He can't run away from that forever. He can keep trying to steal credit for other things, but even that has caused him scandals where Harper has to come out and say, no, you're not going to stand on the grave of Jim Flaherty and pretend you did all.
That's a good point, is he can't run from that forever. The Liberal leadership, I'll put up a little post or picture telling you of all the topics they didn't cover in both Liberal leadership debates. And it's staggering. Like, these are the important issues to Canada, and they didn't touch them at all. That's not going to be the case when Carney has to debate with Poilievre or the Bloc, or even, I don't want to say Jugmeat because I really don't understand how the NDP could keep him on. But even with Jugmeat, it's like, once he's out of his Liberal love fest, the shine is going to quickly come off because he's going to get called on his statements. He's going to get called on his history. And from what we've seen, Mark Carney has a really big chip on his shoulder when you call him on anything. Like, you can tell by his body language. If you watch him, he's spinning his fingers and he's twitching, and he really does not like anyone calling. And it's one of the reasons why he only allows selected media outlets that are on the Liberal payroll to attend his fundraising events and his campaign stops. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting once it's no longer the Liberal love fest and he's actually being challenged by other leaders.
All the stuff that he in fact did. So yeah, I think Poilievre is going to basically clean this guy's clock. The polling shows that the momentary sugar high the Liberals had upon thinking maybe we could get a super good leader by getting rid of Trudeau is mostly subsiding, and people are realizing that they are basically getting a beige-colored work portfolio as their new leader.
Yeah, so Wyatt is 100% correct on that. It's the problem with the Liberal Party was Justin Trudeau. Like, he's unlikable. You don't trust him. He's unlikable. He's slimy. He's slimy. But at the core, the problem is the Liberal policies. You take away all the theatrics, you take away the charisma, you take away all of that, and you bore down on the policies. And it's the Liberal policies that have destroyed Canada. And those policies, Carney supports 100%. It's like the carbon tax. Poilievre's made great hay saying axe a tax, to the point that all the Liberal candidates are now saying axe a tax. But these are the same Liberal candidates that supported increase after increase after increase after increase of that carbon tax. So we got a decade of them supporting it, and we got 3 months of them saying, well, maybe we're wrong. I'm going to go with the decade. Honestly. Me once, shame on you. Fool me 50,000 times, shame on me. So, yeah, a new leader will give them a little bump, and it did. But in the end, it's all about the policies. The carbon tax is a atrocity, and it has to go away. And not like Carney's saying, where he's going to get rid of the consumer carbon tax, but then he's going to hammer producers and businesses with a hidden carbon tax. Well, all that's going to happen is once they get hit with the hidden carbon tax, they're going to take all that extra money that they're paying and put it onto the price so that consumers are paying it. It's still a carbon tax. A carbon tax is a carbon tax is a carbon tax. We need to get rid of it completely. Done. And yeah, so that's about all I have for you today. As I said, I found this very interesting. Wyatt went great into the polling numbers, and I thought he did a fantastic job. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Again, if you want to find Wyatt's YouTube channel, just look in the description of the video. I've linked it in there. And yeah, so if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe, please. If you didn't like this video, leave a dislike. Always feel free to leave a comment. Don't worry, I don't swing my cane too strongly anymore if I disliked your comment. And as always, pew 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Bye.